Yeah.
The shout now. Well done, Bobby Charlton. Well done, Manchester United.
Beckham. It's a Sheringham. And Solskjaer has done it. Radisson saved it. United again. Ready. A magnificent goal by Robin van Persie.
Hello and welcome to United Hour, your official redcafe.net podcast on all things second half United. Sorry, Manchester United. I'm your host, Colm.
I'm Ashwin.
And I'm Jamie.
Yeah, we're recording just almost immediately after another comeback win against Moyes' West Ham, our 9th win in a row away from home, despite, I'm sure, nearly all of us being absolutely, well, I don't know about you, but incandescent with rage at halftime.
Fuming.
Just, I mean, the range of emotions in this year's Manchester United are just so difficult to take. But Ashwin, there was, just before we jump into the game, there was about 3,000 West Ham fans there back in the grounds. I mean, I have some opinions about it, but I mean, how was that for you? Obviously, it's a great thing to have fans back in the ground.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed hearing everything they were saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think
in absolute clarity.
Yeah, I mean, it does create an atmosphere, which I think has been like the most. There's been obviously some really great matches even without fans, but that energy that you kind of get when supporters are at the stadium, just it's its own thing, and it adds its own level to the matches, and without that, it's been kind of a little drab at times, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed their reaction to us scoring the first goal and VAR not ruling it out. So I was enthusiastic about it.
Do we know why they were booing Pogba throughout?
I don't know. I found that a bit weird, yeah, that it was constantly.
I mean, I'm not necessarily against it. I was pretty much agreeing with them for most of the first half, but it did seem on. And then I saw they picked Rashford, which, having seen in the world of football, Millwall taking a stand against kneeling in solidarity, I thought maybe there's something more to this, but possibly not. But yes, Ashwin, as you say, I mean, hearing the commentator apologise for swear words about 8 times throughout the broadcast was
that was funny,
just seemed unnecessary. But no, it's great to have fans back. It's indicative of us hopefully moving forwards in terms of vaccines and all the rest of it. So it is awesome news. Jimmy, the starting lineup, there was a number of changes. Some of them seemed a wee bit left field. Some of them possibly just driven by the number of games and the number of injuries. How did you make of what did you make of that lineup when you saw it?
As you say, I think some of the changes were enforced. So I was expecting before I saw the lineup to see 2 or 3 changes. So I was a bit surprised at who was changed. Maybe more than anything. I think Henderson coming in for De Gea, I think, that was fair enough, because it did look like he maybe had a knock on Wednesday night. I heard on, I think it was TalkSport or something like that, they was saying that there was possibly a chance he might miss the weekend because of a knock he picked up in the PSG game. So it does look like that's how Henderson's managed to get his chance now, because of maybe a knock to De Gea. Fred was the unusual one. I just assumed, because he won't be playing against Leipzig, that he would be absolutely playing today. I don't know if Ollie's maybe just took the decision that he's played a hell of a lot of games, and now that he is going to miss midweek, he's just taking this game as a chance to both give Fred an additional rest and then maybe try out a different combination for the midfield that he'll have to use on Tuesday.
That's what I think. That's exactly what I think. I think that he knows he wants to start Pogba and McTominay in the pivot on what is it, Wednesday we're playing?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. And but they haven't really had a run out together in a while. So I think that's, at first I wasn't really sure why, but I think that makes complete sense that he would want to try that out, or get some minutes together before critical match on Tuesday. So that was good. I assume Bruno will start on Tuesday. So
Yeah.
we gotta look
Yeah.
we gotta look at how those three will work together very nicely in the second half.
But I mean, I do agree with the Fred stuff, but why is he not on the bench?
Yeah, that was the one that threw me more than anything. It was like, yeah, fair enough, he's not starting, but to not even be in the squad, I thought was strange. So he must just be giving him time off, but it's still weird that.
Yeah, it's just odd that, I think obviously when we think back, I know we've dealt with this on a pod already, but the game against PSG, whilst Fred gets zero sympathy and a large portion of blame, it was in the end, after the headbutt, it was Ole who forced him to be in the position that he was in to let us down. And therefore it seems, and I'm not saying this is the reason, but it seems disingenuous to then drop him entirely from the squad as if that's some kind of punishment, when I think it was really as much on Ole as it was on Fred.
Are we sure? I don't even think it's a punishment. I think he genuinely might have been like, look, he's not going to play Tuesday. I'm not going to pick him. I'm going to give him a rest because he's played. I mean, he's played how many minutes? I mean, he's basically played every minute since he's come back into the team. So I feel like this was an opportunity for him to get him some rest. And he kind of did this with even McTominay, right? Like he basically just didn't select him at all for a little bit. And then he immediately put him back in the side and then played him against PSG again. So I think, and this is something that it might be influenced by kind of the schedule where he's going to have to manufacture breaks for players with just how quick and fast these matches are coming this season. So I have a really hard time believing that he would have done it as a punishment. I don't think Ole has shown himself.
I don't think it's his style.
Yeah, that just doesn't seem like something he would do. No. So yeah, I maybe we can agree. I agree with you that it's weird he wasn't even in the team, but I do think it's probably just more of like he's not going to play anyway on Tuesday, so I might as well just give him a rest for a week.
Yeah, and I think it's an absolutely fair point that it probably goes under the radar a few times more than with the like of Fred, but McTominay has been outside of the entire squad for a few weeks sometimes, and we don't really necessarily always draw attention to it because we are stocked in midfield to an extent, even if we don't have kind of the best combination sometimes. Ashwin, this pod, could have gone two different ways, in terms of that performance, and I think it's important that I feel great after that result. I feel absolutely great. I feel, anytime you get a comeback win, which we're being absolutely spoilt with at the moment, you have to celebrate in that big time. You have to give credit in as well because it's never an easy thing to do. But I think it is important to draw a healthy distinction between the first half and the second half here because they're two, it's Jekyll and Hyde stuff. It's two completely separate things. And if the first half performance had maintained, this pod, I don't think any of us would have wanted to do it. It would have been really difficult, But the first half in general was as bad as I think we've been this year at all. And I just think
I'd go further than that.
Ever, maybe in recent memory.
In life.
Are we talking Sevilla under Mourinho and was it Fulham at Moyes where we put in 90 crosses? But there's surely like just a level of absolutely abysmal that should never be possible, never mind acceptable when you have a squad like ours. The cost of the squad, the ability of the squad, it's an amazement to me that a collection of independently good players can play so poorly together. How does that actually happen?
I don't know. So there's a couple of things, and I don't think, and trust me, I'm not excusing how poor we were in the first half because it was, outside of there was like one chance Martial had a shot that him and Tellez worked, and I think Wan-Bissaka set up Martial for a shot right outside the box. And that was about it. That was the sum total of our attacking play in the first half. So I'm not excusing it, but I do think, look, Pogba hasn't played a lot. Him and McTominay haven't played together in a long time in the pivot. Van de Beek, with those two, they're not necessarily, on the same wavelength. Cavani, yes, he's obviously was brilliant last week. But that setup with Greenwood on the right, it's just, there's a lot of pieces there that aren't really in sync with each other. And I think that doesn't help the cause either. I also felt that for some reason, it was everybody. But specifically, I thought Pogba and McTominay were so slow to play the ball forward in the first half. And so as a result, you kind of saw Martial drop into midfield and Cavani tried to drop into midfield to get touches. And because Cavani was dropping, he was basically in the same area as Van de Beek. So the spacing was just awful. It was just really, really bad. There's nobody who was making runs in behind. It's almost inexplicable how poorly we played. And I think the frustrating part for me was, the manager obviously should be responsible for setting them up before the match. But during the match, I think players have a responsibility to kind of adjust to how things are going. And it was so obvious that West Ham was just waiting for us to play those passes into the middle. Rice was coming in and Souček was coming in, and they were just reading it. They were so ready for it. And they were just so easily able to step in and kind of launch counters immediately right off of that. Dangerous more than a few times. We were lucky to only be down 1-0 at half. So I think that, yeah, you can say, and however you want to cut the blame, that's fine. Like, if you want to say Ole deserves most of the blame because the structure and everything about how we were set up was just poor and didn't come off in the first half, that's fair too. But I have really big questions about, I thought Pogba and even Telles, I thought those two specifically for me stood out as just really, really bad in the first half. I was actually, even before they scored the goal, which we'll probably get to shortly, which I think Telles was a major culprit, majorly culpable for. I actually was about to send a message in the chat, like, I think Telles has been quite shit this half, which unfortunately I did not get a chance to send before.
I was watching it. It got to a point where some people were saying, "Oh, well, look, that person hasn't played awfully, maybe." And I was like, how can anyone even put their finger on any positive piece of play from us? I thought maybe Cavani maybe did an okay job holding it up sometimes, but that's the bare minimum you'd expect from him, and otherwise he wasn't in it whatsoever and was quite wasteful with some of the possession.
Yeah,
Maguire and Lindelof maybe could say,
and maybe Wan-Bissaka. That's about it.
Certainly it changed in the second half. Don't be wrong. So we are speaking specifically about the first half, but it was just everyone to a man, and as you say, there were some things that West Ham were able to do that were just so easy for them. Apparently, a lot of our players playing with their back to goal, particularly Martial and Cavani and Van der Beek, not making it able to stick or not being able to beat a man, and they were just coming through the back every single time. Rice, Souček, and their centre backs, Ogbonna and players like that, just easily dispossessing and then feeding their forwards again.
What are your thoughts? I actually, just real quick, I want to get both your thoughts on this. I like Van de Beek. I think he's looked really tidy and sharp at times when he's played. Do you feel like there are times I feel like he has space and to look forward, pick a pass, and he just takes a really safe option, either plays it back or plays a sideways pass to a fullback.
I think it's a bit, and people are going to hate this comparison. It doesn't sound good for our exciting new summer signing.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
It's Jesse Lingard.
Yep.
There's shades of Jesse Lingard. And that's totally fair because the things he's really good. Now, I think he's better football than Jesse Lingard, but there's things he does that are so good. The general speed of his play is so good. His movement is so good. His ability to arrive in certain positions is so good, and I think his reading of the game is so good, and he's technically, I think, a much more proficient footballer than Jesse Lingard, and so that obviously just makes it all better as well. However, at the moment, stylistically, he looks like a horrible fit in our team, and I don't necessarily blame him for that. I think Lingard also often suffered from that, in that he was the one moving and everyone else was standing still. He was the one wanting to engage in these little trade-offs and close 1-2s and movements, and other people were trying to be much more direct or whatever else. And I think we're seeing a very similar thing with Van der Beek. I do think from the limited minutes we've had so far, the solution looks like it might be playing him deeper. That seems to, then he has players to play around, and as long as Bruno's ahead of him to feed, all the things he does well are good. But a 10 on his own,
he links well with Bruno and Fred, it seems.
Yeah. But today it's just, that's a difficult game to judge him on today. And also I thought Declan Rice completely handled him, as he did a lot of our players, and had an extremely good game in the first half. But it did look like there was a real lack of creation from him there. As you say, a lot of times he drifts into these positions, takes it, and he never wants to take a man on, and he rarely wants to play a pass, a key pass forward kind of thing. It's always very much looking for the nearest man to offload it to. That's not a bad thing, but it did look like an issue today in terms of when Bruno's not on the pitch, it can't all be on Pogba, because that'll guarantee you see the worst of Paul Pogba, and there's no one else really to do it. Jamie, I don't know if you see it any different. I thought it was his worst performance for us today.
Yeah, I don't think it was great, but the biggest problem for me and it has been in most of the first half performances when we've been poor. I know what you guys are saying about Declan Rice played very well, and he did. He was excellent at snapping into challenges and not giving the players any time on the ball. But the lack of accuracy in passing the football is shocking from our team at times. I mean, Gary Neville said it about 4 times in the first half that the passing from Man United wasn't just bad, it was atrocious. Every pass from deep to midfield was 5 yards either too far left, too far right, too far long, too far short. So immediately every player's under pressure to try and control the ball, giving the West Ham players the time to snap into the tackle and win the ball. The amount of times we give the ball away is absolutely criminal. We just can't pass the ball to anybody. We've always got to make it difficult. And this is the thing. I know Pogba attracts a lot of criticism, but there's too many players in our team that do the same thing, where the pass is really lackadaisical. It's not into an area that makes it easier for the receiving player to control and then make the next pass. It's almost as if all the time the player who's receiving the ball is always stretching, is always having to move a different direction to gather the ball. The minute they get the ball, they're under pressure from the other team. They've then got to play a safe pass back the way just to make sure we don't lose the ball. It's infuriating at times to watch us try and keep the ball.
I think one of the big issues that we have just today in the first half, it was like the worst it's been. But I think when we are playing poorly, this is one of the things we really struggle with is we don't consistently try to hit the runner stretching behind. And that's something that Rashford he gives us, he's the one attacker we have. And I think Cavani does this a bit too. Maybe not today, but just getting in behind, constantly threatening, stretching the defense. That's not something we do enough of. And today it felt like we were playing in this box in the first half where everybody is in this kind of like enclosed area. And so it becomes so easy for West Ham to just sit back and, keep their shape and then wait for their chance to jump into the tackle and intercept the pass. And I agree, like part of that is exactly what you're saying, where it's like there were a few times today, and I know that people will be like, well, like Wan-Bissaka was wide open on the flank. And I understand that he's not this great attacking force, but like you have to actually play to play that pass. And there were so many times today where I saw McTominay, where I saw Pogba visibly see him and then check back and then either pass it to Maguire or do some useless pass to like Tellez or Martial on the left, where like you have to make them honor that. And to be fair to Wan-Bissaka, I think his passing in forward areas and his crossing has actually been pretty decent. Like he did have a cross today. I mean, like I said, one of the only bits of good play in the first half was when he and Greenwood kind of linked up on the right, and then he got forward and then played a cross right at the top of the box to Martial in stride. And I'm not saying like he's not Trent Alexander-Arnold. Obviously, we know that, but he is at least willing. He's been willing to make those runs this season, and we just have to be willing to use it. And like if it just, I understand the argument that he's not like. Oh, I understand. Like, I get why players won't play on the ball. I at some point I don't get it because you're not creating anything the other way.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an argument because if you have a player on your team who you don't want to play the ball, even if they're in oceans of space, it hints at a bigger problem. And I don't think, as much as we are disparaging about Aaron Wan-Bissaka and how bad he is on the ball, myself probably being the captain of that.
No, it's Ed. It's Ed.
Fair enough, but never on a football pitch you just can't have that. You can't have that. And there were times today, particularly McTominay, who I thought had passes on and decided to put his foot in the ball and come back the other way. And it just points towards a slowness in our play that was there in the first half. What I think is really interesting is I think so much of it has to do with just a small number of key players, because as soon as Bruno and Rashford come on the pitch, it's completely different. And the same players were on the pitch around them. And they were playing, I think, basically the same way. The shape didn't change. I don't think they just made loads of silly, bad errors, mental errors or errors in concentration in the first half, and suddenly they just sharpened up loads in the second half. There'll be a small element of that. But I also think it's, when you don't have something in front of you to obviously hit. Now, I appreciate what you're saying, Ashwin, about, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, oceans of space. There's really no excuse for moving the ball progressively there. But oftentimes, if Martial's just kind of hanging around the middle of nowhere, vaguely towards the left-hand side, Cavani's standing on top of Van der Beek, as Jamie's alluded to, and Greenwood, God bless him, is a right winger that is nowhere near right winger. Like, he's just completely out of the game in that zone. You know, I do feel for the McTominays and the Pogbas and the fullbacks and the centre-backs in that position, because it was so obviously evidenced in the second half that when Rashford comes on and threatens deep in behind, and when Bruno comes on and has that ability to pick the positions and receive the ball on the turn and open his body and play these little layoffs that just transform our football, that suddenly those players behind who looked like they couldn't progress the ball 2 yards are suddenly, you know, hitting 40-yard passes and playing the ball forwards, no issue whatsoever.
It's also just the willingness to do it. Like Bruno, he's infuriating, right? Like we all like there are times where you're like, Jesus, just keep possession. Like we don't need to hit a home run every time we get the ball. But the fact that like I honestly don't even know how to explain it, because Pogba will do the same thing, and I find it so much more infuriating. Whereas like Bruno, there's something. I mean, he's very talismanic. He's been very. I'm sure we'll get to this soon. But like him and Rashford, in a way, I feel like when they come on the pitch, we exude more confidence. We feel like it feels like the players have much more belief in what they're doing can come off when those two are on the pitch. Versus, you know, did it ever feel like you in the first half that Pogba was like comfortable trying to make a dangerous pass, like not a dangerous pass, but a high risk, high reward pass, or that McTominay? It just felt like everybody wanted to just be safe.
It was a total vacuum of creativity in Bruno's absence, you know.
So that's because of the congestion up front, though. That's what's Colm. I totally agree with what Colm's saying about up front. They're far too congested. So too often Martial is not interested at all in going and hugging. Just hug the left touchline for 5-10 minutes. Just do something different instead of constantly standing on the edge of the left-hand side of the box, just waiting for the ball.
I mean, I think Jamie's absolutely right, and it speaks to a point that one of the two you made at the start, which is Ole can do so many things until the first whistle blows, and then after that, you have to have players who can solve problems on the pitch. And you know, we could rag on Martial pretty hard, and I'm sure we will continue to do so up until about the 60 minute of this pod. But you know, he's proven that he's so one track and he's so linear in his footballing thought processes, to the point of, you know, just absolute frustration, because he's such a gifted player, he's such a talented player, and yet there's just that little mental block where he just can't seem to figure out that if he just makes certain runs at certain times, and if we're in this position, it really helps us if he goes and does that. And you just see the difference. And I appreciate Rashford's been playing left wing for a year while Martial's been playing up front, and that, you know, as someone mentioned at the start of the pod, the general jiggery pokery in terms of our lineup today was clearly not helpful in the first half. A lot of players put into positions that they haven't played in a while, or that aren't really their strongest, and it looked that way. But it is just frustrating. Jamie, moving on then, their goal, 1-0, I mean, it was coming all day long. They were cutting us open pretty comfortably. That was another really, you know, concerning thing about that first half, that yes, we're used to completely lacking creation in first halves, but also we just look so leaky and easily got at the first half. I mean, it's another set piece, zonal. I don't know about you, but it's not really working for me.
No, it's not working for me, and that's the safest bet you can make in a Man United game at the moment, that Man United will concede a goal from set piece, because it's always one player at least loses their man or just doesn't have the correct concentration at the correct moment, and their man goes wide. I was actually surprised West Ham's goal took as long as it did, if I'm being honest. I expected them to be in front a lot sooner than they were, just off how the general pattern of the first half was going. They had a really good chance. I think it was Fornals maybe had the header at the far post. I think Henderson would have had it covered, but that was a good chance anyway, the header at the far post. They then hit the post. They then have multiple opportunities of men running into the box and then just not quite taking their chance. So when the goal did arrive, as you say, it was absolutely coming. It was the most obvious thing that a West Ham goal was coming. I didn't think Tellez had a particularly good game in the first half either, and as Ashwin's already alluded to, it's him that loses his man at the far post, and it is just that concentration. It's one of those, he turns around to look to see where the ball is, but stops moving, whereas the West Ham player just keeps moving, gambles,
Totally.
and just gets.
For me, the front post, the front post thing annoys me more.
Yes,
than the back post
yeah,
thing.
that's true as well. I mean, the Southampton game's the same. The Southampton game's the same.
I just don't understand why Cavani's on the pitch. Why is Martial the first guy? Like, why is he the one in that area? That should be Cavani. That's the first man there. It should not be Martial.
The thing is, it's so
to me.
daft because Martial is too far outside the 6-yard box, and then Cavani's the second man. They're both basically marking that front post, but he's too far back. He's inside his post, and to me, the spacing of it is just all wrong. It leaves this big, beautiful gap, which is where the ball wants to go anyway. Because if the ball comes down before Martial, it's an awful corner. It hasn't beat the first man. All it has to do is beat him, and the next person running in is always going to be Cavani to the ball. So to me, it's like, just the pair of them were both, Cavani should have been much closer up behind Martial, and Martial probably should have been a wee step further back. But again, I think per personnel choice, you used to have the like of Ibrahimovic, unbelievable defending set pieces. Lukaku, unbelievable defending set pieces. Robin van Persie, always unbelievable at defending set pieces. often strikers make quite good set piece defenders, particularly corners and free kicks, because they're just good headers of the ball usually. And I mean, that's never been true of Martial, and it's just obviously 2 weeks in a row where that has absolutely cost us. For Telles, it's bad. You should follow your man in. Souček is an extremely good player on the set piece in terms of maintaining his movement and his kind of. He's a bit of a live wire in terms of set pieces.
It's good for my fantasy team.
But once that, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a big pick at the start. Everyone was like, Souček's going to get, bare goals, and he hasn't really, but he did today, obviously, because it's United. But once the first flick on's made, it's such a instantaneous thing where if you're flat-footed and he's moving, it looks horrible because Telles hasn't moved whatsoever, and it is poor. He should go back with him, but it's like, I mean, we're talking half a second, millisecond things. For me, the feeling absolutely is the front post again.
On corners, though, did you see that stat in the first half that
No.
came up when we had a corner? So, like, the ball went out for a corner, and it was maybe our third of the half or something like that. And the commentator just made me laugh because this graphic came up in the corner, and it was United have had 61 corners this season and scored from one. And the commentator was like, I think it's safe to say they're not going to score here. And sure enough, the ball went to the near post. They cleared it, and it was like, well, that was the most obvious thing as well, that we aren't going to score.
It's absolutely brutal.
I think actually overall this season, including Europe, we've actually been okay on set piece goals. I'd have to double check that, but I mean, we're not a great set piece team either way. I think that's fair to say. And a team like West Ham is much better, way better at scoring on set pieces. It's frustrating because, especially with kind of the lineup we had out there today, we should be threatening on corners quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's a big team. Like Pogba, he's an aerial threat.
Yeah.
McTominay he's a big boy. Maguire obviously slab head. Lindelof is. Nope, never mind.
Doesn't want it. Yeah, exactly.
But Cavani,
Lindelof doesn't have the minerals for it. No, I think if it was like City or awful corners and they just play them out, basically, like Barca, they basically just accept the fact that that's not their thing, and you can respect that. That's fine. Sometimes I think being good at set pieces is kind of the hallmark of a bad team, but for us, as you say, there's a difference because we have so many aerially good players that really, it should be more fruitful for us, definitely, and it ain't. And you really wonder, we've chatted about it the last few weeks about Telles taking corners from the right and Bruno taking them from the left, hitting them out to Telles to volley in. What are we working on, and why do we think that's the best route to success? It's very puzzling stuff sometimes. But listen, that's almost 30 minutes of wall-to-wall negativity, which is absolutely what the first half deserved. And it would be totally remiss of us not to treat this podcast in that manner. I think that's absolutely the correct way to do it. But we can sort of move away from the great success of our Leatherface in the first half to Ole ball in the second half, I think, which is just a really interesting dynamic to this match where, I was so depressed in the first half because playing West Ham is always awful, recently so, and even more so now that Moyes is there, because it's always such a banana skin. I can't even think of anything worse. It's like Mourinho coming back and doing us with Spurs, although at least with Mourinho, he's a credible manager, and Moyes is just he's done really well with that West Ham team, and it was just, you were just looking at it and I was going, this West Ham team are like the complete antithesis of Manchester United at the moment. They're very limited squad wise. They've got good players but not great players, but they work so hard. Everyone knows their role. The setup is absolutely bang on. Out of position, to drop into this 4-5-1, the hammer through the back of you, they launch on the counter attack. He's found a few championship gems. in Bowen and the like, and they were just completely outplaying us. And I was like, what a damning indictment that a failed Manchester United manager, a spectacularly failure of a Manchester United manager, is now kind of schooling the current Manchester United manager with a much worse team. And that is pretty much the take on the first half. It was absolutely abysmal. But we probably should. I don't even know how much credit, how bad it is on Ole for the first half performance, as we've spoken about it. A lot of that comes down to player responsibility, I think. But certainly, I think he deserves some credit, Jamie, for the second half subs.
Yeah, I was a bit curious about the subs, to be honest, at half time, because, all right, Van de Beek didn't play well, and Cavani struggled to an extent, but I thought Martial was absolutely horrendous first half. I was amazed he wasn't the kind of forward line sub, if you like. I thought Pogba may have been subbed off, push Van de Beek back, and then put Bruno on. I thought that might have been what he did, but he chose what he chose, and ultimately it paid off with a much better second half. The difference Bruno makes to the team is just incredible.
We're coming to that. We're coming to that. So don't worry. That's a section of its own.
Yeah, I think he does deserve credit for the subs, just purely because it couldn't get much worse in the second half. But he didn't wait. No, he made the changes at half time.
Yeah, he didn't wait.
Which was good to see. He was decisive for the second week in a row in the Premier League. And again, for the second week in a row, the subs have absolutely made the difference.
Yeah, hopefully that's a learning point, because I think it's an absolutely valid point to make, Ashwin, that we have seen him wait. It would be very easy to go in and give that starting 11 the hairdryer and hope that that'll be enough kind of thing. And I think we've seen that a lot before from Ole, where performances haven't been great in the first half, that he wants to give those players the opportunity to drag themselves out of it, which isn't always a bad thing. That's not just obviously a poor choice in any given circumstance. Obviously, each game is different, but he does seem to be becoming more reactive, which is something we've been asking for. I agree with Jamie. I thought, Martial, who'd shown a complete inability to hold the ball under pressure on the left wing, was now being asked to go and do that at number 9. And I just wonder, we're entering dodgy territory here now with this Cavani, Martial, number 9 thing, that's also going to impact Rashford. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that. I mean, I think he keeps Martial on, hoping that he gets a goal or something, just as a nod to the fact that he's obviously trusted him for the last year and been good for the last year, and just wanting him to play out of that. But really, I mean, it probably should have been Cavani that stayed on.
Well, I think Cavani was hurt, is what Ole said.
Did he?
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned that in the chat. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I mean, I think that there's also the fact that Cavani's older, and he knows that he's probably going to start him against RB on Tuesday. Can he go the full 90? He went 70 something against PSG. There's an element here of you have to manage his minutes too, even if Martial is playing worse at the moment. He's younger, he can handle the minutes a bit more, and he missed through suspension. He missed 3 Premier League matches already this season, so it's not like he's necessarily in the quote unquote red zone for minutes. But I think I understand. I agree. Like, Martial has been really poor this season so far. That miss against PSG was just god awful. He's had both of them. He's missed chances in the league too. I feel like there's also been some of his shots that I don't even know if I would necessarily blame him. Just great saves on a couple of occasions I've seen. But he hasn't been at his best, and I think it's easy to take him off, and that nobody would blame him for that. But I do think that if you want to get the best out of him, if you're hoping, you have to kind of leave him on at times and just hope that he plays himself out of it, because we know, like, as much as he blows hot and cold, he does blow hot, right? Like, he eventually blows hot. So you have to kind of ride the wave, and maybe he's been great in training for all we know, and he just thinks, it's a matter of time before he gets a goal, and then once he gets a goal, he's going to kick on. That's definitely possible, and I think he's had stretches like this, maybe not to this extent, but he's had stretches like this, even under Ole last year, I believe, and in previous seasons we've seen. So I don't really have a huge problem with that, and I think that. I think that's totally reasonable that he went the way he did. maybe he thought that, having a fluid front three instead of Cavani, who is kind of more of a, between the goalposts kind of a striker, was something that he needed to get to do more of. That's possible. And look, ultimately, I think he deserves credit because the substitutions he made got the best out of the players that remained on the pitch. And it obviously turned the match, and the players that he brought on, literally all of them, had direct impact on each goal.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you really can't say any better than that. I mean, when that happens as a manager, you have to just say that's all you would ever want when you make the subs.
Have a second glass of wine tonight for him.
Yeah.
I have actually just checked there. Cavani is actually injured. Sorry, just to check that.
And I did think, although Martial went off in the 60th minute and Mata came on, which didn't seem like it was going to be the best thing in the world. It didn't necessarily seem like a great game from Mata. It was great, and also I thought the signs were there before that. Even though Martial still wasn't amazing, he was much more involved because we were much better because of Rashford and Bruno. So I think, if Martial doesn't get injured and stays on, I think there's every chance that the game still goes the way it goes. And, unlikely he's involved in the goals in some way. So I don't think it looks really bad, from Martial's perspective, in that he played awfully and then went off with a niggly injury at a period where we were still losing. So, it's very easy to sink the boot there, but I hope it's not a big injury because we need him. Like we just don't have the strength and depth up front to manage the amount of games we have. So we need him back on form and we need him available. Jamie, the goal then to get us back into it. The 3 goals we scored today were spectacular. Take us through the first one.
It might be a bit of a downer, but I thought it was out. I genuinely thought.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that first. It 100% was out.
It was out for me. There's an angle. I think it's from, say, the camera angle is looking down the pitch at Henderson, and you can see he's so close to the touchline that when he kicks the ball, it can only go one way.
Impossible.
It can only go out.
Yeah. With the curl on it, like it must go 10 yards out, the way he sets it out, and then come back.
How does the linesman not flag that? That's what I don't know.
I think it's a tough one, because the linesman has to run to catch up with the play.
He's not looking at the ball because he's immediately got to look the other way because our players are moving forward. So it's one of those where he can't just keep an eye on the ball. He has to actually kind of start running down the line and look to see where our players were. But there's an absolutely brilliant clip of David Moyes
Priceless.
where he applauds I think it's Bowen for closing down Henderson. Obviously the ball goes out, hence why he starts clapping.
Yeah.
And just to see his reaction when he turns round and sees Bruno kill the ball.
I loved it.
And his hands go out right and he's like,
so
oh my God, what? And I was just like, oh, that's absolutely hilarious.
It's just like a second of perfect TV because he doesn't even entertain the thought that it's anything other than a throw into his team.
Hilarious.
So he literally watches the ball sail over his head, begins to clap, and then it's like turns around and realizes that actually we've just scored a pearler. So that was a great bit of football. Also, big shout out Dean Henderson scurrying off the line. The funny thing about that is, and this is just how football is, if Jared Bowen doesn't chase that down like a maniac for no apparent reason because he's never getting to it, we don't score that goal.
Yeah, right? Because Henderson probably just drills it back into the area.
Passes it out, Maguire, it's just a nothing. So, but, I think what we all know is David De Gea would have still been rooted to his line and Bowen would have been one-on-one. So, it's nice that he was able to get up there and hammer it through. And the very fact that Bruno's even making that run, it's just...
Oh, it's class.
It's just so good.
But the way he kills the ball, when it comes down, he just kills the ball, checks inside, and it's not just a mindless kind of run into the box. It's all the time, head up, looking to see who's approaching, who can he pick out. He picks out Pogba, and the finish from Pogba is outstanding.
It doesn't get any better.
Okay, but when he shot it, what was your initial reaction?
Over the bar.
No, it was one of those ones where when it leaves the foot, you're like, oh, that's a goal.
I was only joking there.
When he was lining it up, I was like, fuck off.
He had one slightly like that in the first half, and he didn't do horribly with it, but it obviously didn't do that well. But Pogba has not scored enough goals from outside the box for us in general. for his level of ability in terms of long distance shooting. He's often been so unlucky. I think he hit the bar like 7 times in one season.
Wasn't that his thing at Juve too? Like he would just score
Yeah,
screamers.
done it a lot. You've
Like literally all the time. And he should be able to, and the way he just, I mean, he rasps that. I mean, it's just such a perfect technique, because when you plant your side foot into it and kind of guide it, you can still get so much power with the ball coming across like that. And it's just, I mean, it is a tremendous technique. I thought, was it Fabianski? Actually did pretty well.
I thought he was unlucky actually, because when he gets his hand on it, it's so perfect in terms of the right amount of power, the right amount of placement, the right amount of pace. So even though he gets his hand right on it, he's got no chance of keeping it out, and he's unlucky really.
I think it actually even took a little bit of a deflection off the West Ham defender that took a little bit of the pace off of it. So I mean, when the contact, it was perfect. Like when you,
I like the celebration as well. Actually, sorry.
When he,
well, the booed flat out for the whole game. So
when he, like when I saw the replay, I didn't even realize it at first, because it was like when he went to hit it, in my head I'm already getting ready for the goal kick. And it goes in, and I'm like, holy shit. But then when you see the replay of it, you can really see how, I mean, it was perfect. It was really just a perfect strike. And as soon as we scored that, I thought, this is over. Like there's no way we're going to lose it. It was no chance that we were going to not score a second or a third.
I think every single West Ham fan, I think David Moyes knew that, and he was going over his head, but every single West Ham player knew it after that goal as well, because I thought they pretty much stopped after that.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I think that could be a big goal for Pogba. I think it's important that I think it's certainly important to him as a player that he contributes with goals and assists. That he's right in the thick of it. I don't think just that virtuoso performance for deep, providing for others, necessarily gives him everything he needs. I think he's best when he's involved in that manner. And I think that could hopefully kickstart some kind of form for him. I know he's much maligned by United fans, and certainly on this pod at times, but everyone recognises how good he is and how good a player he could be for us. Some of us are at a point where,
that's why he's maligned,
though. Happen.
That's why he's maligned.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we know he should be doing so much more. He should be doing so much more, and he knows it. Everybody, I've read stories too where I think even before this season, Laurie Whitwell, who he writes, he's like the United correspondent for The Athletic, and he was saying even everybody on the team still views Pogba as kind of the best player in the team, and it's just like the performance. And I know that he's had he had COVID, and I think that obviously has affected him in a way that it doesn't. Tella's had COVID too, but he has. At least physically, he doesn't seem to have been affected too much by it. It's different for different people, and Pogba obviously. You
just don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's obvious that whatever it is, his fitness has not been there. I thought today, especially in the second half, I thought physically, at least, even the full 90, he didn't seem like off to me in that sense. I think physically he looked close to his best again. And that was really big. I think that just playing the full 90 was a huge thing for him. He hasn't done that probably since Spurs this year. So I thought that was really good to see. And then I thought the second goal was great. It was just that hit was it was so pure. And as soon as it left his foot,
second goal for me.
It was
Van Persie-esque, the second goal.
Yeah.
I mean, the second goal is that's what to me it was just like, and I have long said that's the player he reminds me most of. I know people have said like Brazilian Ronaldo and all that kind of stuff. For me, he's just a slightly more athletic Van Persie. I mean, it just oozes Van Persie. The touch, which in itself is almost Bergkamp-esque. The touch just kills it with the toe, and then he's so aware that the touch is coming back over his shoulder, and his unerring finishing on his left is really where the comparisons come from.
And he hits it on a half volley too. That's just like it's right off the bat.
Which is the sweet time, and it always finds the corner. He actually had a few chances after that where you would expect him to do much better, because the bar is so high for Greenwood, which is really good to see, because it's been an extremely difficult start to the season. I think he hasn't had the joy outright that he had at the tail end of last year, in a large part because of the way I think we play this year.
I don't think he's been playing with much joy either. I think you're right. Yeah, like he does not. And we're all doing this body language thing, but like he just genuinely has, and he's had a lot of things go on, right? He had the whole thing with the England team with Iceland. Then there was reports about Ole's not happy because he showed up late. And then obviously I think his one of his good friends passed away, right? Yes, and that's tough. Like he's 19 years old, all of 19 years old. That's tough. I don't think anybody can pretend that that's not, any of this is easy. And yeah, it just hasn't, he hasn't been playing with that kind of like just freedom and joy that you saw at the end of last year. And maybe that's part of like, you're not just a kind of bonus now. Like he's actually a player that is being depended upon.
Yeah, it's looked after.
It's a different thing. And yeah, I think that goal was huge for him. And I thought just in the second half in general, he really came to life. And I thought some of his movement once he moved into that center forward position was, it was
came
brilliant.
alive. He came alive when he went centre forward, and I think that's a big takeaway from tonight as well. We have this Martial Cavani issue, and then we have Greenwood playing out right when he isn't a right winger, and that's largely due to the fact that we have no one else to play there. But it's really a disservice to Greenwood to play him anywhere other than centre forward, I think. And I really think there should be. It's tough in our schedule. There's no easy games in the Premier League. There's no easy games in Europe for us, and the cups haven't really kicked off in earnest yet, so it's hard to find the games. But I think he should be played at centre forward in as many minutes as possible, even if it's a second half of a game we've already won or whatever else. He just has to get the minutes there, because that is where he will play, and he will be a top class centre forward for us. So it's just it's a matter of time. So for me it's short term pain for long term gain. Get him in there and get him used to it, because he will explode. And you just saw the movement and the willingness. I think it was a breath of fresh air for him to kind of get off that flank.
Yeah, and
basically.
then the one I heard, one stat about him that I heard in the second half was he's the youngest Man United player since Norman Whiteside to score 20 goals. So it's clear. Yeah, exactly. He's an incredible talent, and I agree. He's on outright out of necessity more than anything, whereas he's far more comfortable up front. You can just see it when he plays there.
A damning indictment of our transfer window business as regards right wingers.
Wait until January, pal. Wait until January.
Well, the summer actually. We've just been told the summer, Ashwin. Ole will be back in the summer, not in January.
No, we got Diallo Jamie, coming in.
Well, I don't think. I mean, I've seen the YouTube videos as well, but I just think that's a classic problem that we're going to fall foul of once again in terms of expecting children to do great things for this club when they clearly aren't ready. Jamie, there's been this kind of Bruno for that goal. It's his flick again, and I want to kind of come on to him now. We've kind of been itching to speak about him throughout the podcast because he's Manchester United Football Club as far as I'm concerned, but his little flick to set free, I think it was Tellez to play in the ball for Greenwood. I mean, it's just, he's involved in literally everything positive we do. There's been this narrative creeping in kind of the general discourse in terms of United fans over the last couple of weeks that, and I even said it last week in the pod, Bruno's stats are like world leading since his arrival in the Premier League. And therefore, I would suggest that we should actually be doing a lot better, a lot more consistently. If you have a player who's able to provide, combined 35, 36 goals and assists in as many games, that should be carrying you through a lot of those games. And it hasn't necessarily translated with us, although our form in that period, is pretty much second only to Liverpool.
It's top now.
Well, hey, even better. Yeah, fair. But the question really that's been seeping into, I think a lot of people, and I don't necessarily think it's the first take in the world, is that Bruno is somehow keeping Ole on a job or kind of, putting a shine on otherwise very average performances. I mean, is it fair? And just how important is Bruno for us?
He is Man United, as you said, as far as I'm concerned. You do have to wonder just where on earth would we be if we didn't have him. And the flick down the line for Tellez is outstanding, but it's not even the best pass that he played that game for me. The best one he played was for the chance for Rashford to hit the post. It's an unbelievable pass. Yeah. Like to just.
And the turn is for me as good as the pass on that one. The way he opens the body out, roads the man. That's something that no other player could do in the first half, and yet he does it with ease, and then can deliver the eye of the needle pass.
It's different class. It really is. It's just. I don't know why, because. And I mean, I don't know why he's maybe not getting the praise of like Kevin De Bruyne or whoever else you want to name. Because as much as he does give the ball away, I don't mind at all, because he's trying different things. He's trying to get us on the front foot. He's trying to release players down the channel. And that stat that was kicking about where he made 8 chances in the game today, which is more than any other player has made in a game in the Premier League, and he came on at half time. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, perfect situation to come on. And I think, we've seen him start pretty much every game since he's been here. I think bar maybe one at the start. And so we've actually been deprived of his impact as a sub. And he's like, things that other players do, they'll do one thing well and another thing not well, one thing well, another thing well. He seems to have everything. And I think the comparison with Kevin De Bruyne for me is absolutely spot on. I think they're kind of different players in that Kevin De Bruyne is much more polished in his general play and will keep possession. And I think people favour that. And rightly so, there's no issue. He performed brilliantly today as well with a goal and assist. Bruno obviously does a lot more silly things sometimes and things that look bad.
He's more of a maverick.
And he kind of lets him... Totally more of a maverick. But I also think he gives you so much more in terms of...
pressing and...
his leadership, his pressing, his tenaciousness, his combativeness, and just his personality. I mean, to me, I just see Cantona. Like that's... Cantona was a player who could be pretty awful at times as well. But his personality carried not only him through, but us as a football club through. And it's like people... sometimes forget, they look back at those early 90 years and just before we went kind of blew up in that sense with the class of 91, class of 92, apologies. But Cantona was everything for us in those years. Cantona was everything. Even if he was playing poorly, he was everything.
He's got that swagger, Bruno, hasn't he?
But it's almost an over reliance, because we saw in the first half that it just, without him, it's like the team just don't know what to do. Everyone's passing to Pogba, and that's not fair on Pogba. And it just seemed like it was, like, oh my God, where's the guy that normally does everything for us? And that's not necessarily the healthiest. But at the same time,
as I said, it's swagger as well that he's got. And even if he isn't having a good game, he just demands the ball. He's just convinced that if he mucks up one chance, it doesn't matter. He'll get the ball again, and he'll make another chance. And
he's inspiring. Like the thing is, so there's a lot of players we have who, like Rashford is at some point, right? If you're Rashford, you might stop making runs if you're not getting the pass. They'll never stop making runs for Bruno because they know if they make the run, he'll at least try to hit the pass. Like he'll hit passes that they don't even think he should hit sometimes. I remember there was one last week where Bruno played one way down the line, and Rashford actually stopped running after it for a bit because he thought it was going out, and then he was like, oh shit, it's actually going to stay in. Yeah. And I just think like he adds so much to our overall play because of that, because of his willingness to, it takes a level of courage to make mistakes, and I just think that's something that we don't necessarily have consistently.
And, Ole said before the game, or in explanation for not starting him, that he had this little issue with his foot from the Southampton game, and that he obviously played through it for the PSG game, but that he was hoping he could not have to play him, and he would only play him if absolutely required today. And you would never know that coming on, and it's one of these funny things recently in football kind of commentary where you never want a player to play injured, but it is part of the game. It does happen. There's no way you can play 60 games a year and not have to play through injuries, and some players just do it better than others. Some players are completely unwilling to do it. Some players can't do it. It just throws their whole game off. And some players, you can just throw a plaster on it and it will just be as good, and you'll never see a whinge or a cry or a hole. They'll never use it as an excuse or a it won't even be visually obvious during a game, and he's just absolutely that kind of player as well. It's just, he absolutely is. It should be our captain, although I thought Maguire was decent today.
Yeah, Maguire played well today.
Sorry, I do want to answer your initial, like, should Ole, like, you just said a very interesting thing. Right? I'm too young. I didn't even know Manchester United existed in 1992. But I don't remember that. Okay. All I can say is, if he was that central to the success of that team, does that mean that Sir Alex Ferguson does not deserve any credit?
No, Ferguson's on record literally saying,
he said that before,
we would have done nothing.
Right, and so he's and I guess
that's why I think it's a disingenuous argument. The point, it's something that some people are throwing up in a way that seems like they're almost using Bruno's brilliance to shit on Ole, which I think is totally unfair. First of all, Ole bought him. Second of all, Ole is the one picking him, and that's all a manager has to do. And Ole is managing him day to day, and he's clearly getting the best out of him. So, you can say he's not doing as well with everyone else or the general team shape or whatever, but I think it's a bad faith argument essentially to try and detract from Ole.
And I just think there's a few, like, I think Ole is he a great manager? No, I don't think he's a great manager. I think there's a lot of things that are left. There are things that he does that I think that you could definitely improve upon. I would never argue that. I do think that he gets way more criticism than I think he's analyzed in the most negative lens of any other manager at a top club right now. But it's gotten to a point. I saw today after the match. First, Michael Cox. Okay, this guy is like tactics god on Twitter or whatever the hell. His first tweet was, Manchester United, they're such a woefully disorganized team, and Bruno Fernandes is single-handedly saving them. I think that's just a bullshit argument, because at the same time, Liverpool were good, right? Before they got Virgil van Dijk. They were a good team, for sure. They were not anywhere near the level they are now. Does that mean that Jurgen Klopp needs, I don't think the argument of the best player on the team makes them better, so therefore we've seen City drop off, right? Since Kevin De Bruyne. Yeah, since when Kevin De Bruyne doesn't play, the fact that Aguero hasn't been as good as he has been in the past the last couple of years, that Silva has left the club. I think when you lose
think there was
players,
a season when City won when Kevin De Bruyne was out for 80% of the season, and to me, at the time, I thought that is so impressive. That is so impressive,
yeah,
because
I agree.
It is a hard thing to do. If you take the best player out of any team, of course they're going to do worse. So I agree, completely reductive. I think it's verging on just a bad faith argument where it's just. There's lots of things. If you want to have a go at Ole, you can construct. I could write you an essay tonight in terms of all the things that aren't quite good enough and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to go to that level of simplicity and bad faith, I don't think so. But it's out there, and that's just sometimes how the fan base goes. And you can understand it. Sometimes we do get such a mixed bag in terms of performances that it's hard not to be reactionary and to arrive at those kind of quite polar opinions. But definitely not fair. Jamie, the third goal quickly. I mean, what a pass! The 3 goals were unbelievable.
He does what Mata does. He just keeps the ball, keeps it ticking over, keeps it tidy, and the pass to release Rashford again is just outstanding, absolutely tremendous. And he doesn't even look up really.
He barely
looks. One of those. He just knows the area that Rashford's going to be in. So the minute the ball comes to him, first time, bang, straight in, and Rashford's got a running in goal. And I heard Rob Green saying after the game that the touch Rashford takes immediately, where he gets it more central, but just to the point where the keeper isn't going to have time to run out and make the challenge. Green said that's the hardest thing to do as a goalie, when somebody takes a touch like that and you're immediately on the back foot. You know it's going to be a goal.
Well, it's sometimes Rashford's biggest problem, because the first touch defines the finish. You either make it the easiest finish in the world or the hardest finish in the world, and that's what the like of a Greenwood or a Haaland does so well, that even when the first touch isn't perfect, they can overcome it with brilliant finishing. But for players like Rashford, it really is important to get that, because we saw a few times tonight him go through on goal and fluff his lines. He had that one that hit the post from Bruno that should have been just as easy, really. But he did deserve the goal, because he was absolutely fantastic when he came on. He played well, a lot of purpose, ran in behind. Again, I think in the first half, no one dribbled at anyone. We didn't have anyone taking anyone on. I think it's such a hole in our team that, Bruno's a great passer, great movement, but Rashford's the only one who really wants to commit and run at a man. Martial doesn't really do it anymore since he's gone to number 9. Even now when he's playing off the left, huge issue. But he gave us that, and he gave us obviously the deep ball in behind. Some quick other notable performers. I thought Maguire and Wan-Bissaka, probably also Lindelof to be fair to him, but I thought Maguire, we were very shaky, very easily got it, but I thought our defence was put in some very unenviable positions in the first half. The fullbacks I thought were Telles, everything came down the left-hand side. I think Wan-Bissaka was broadly good, but Telles was very much the leaky part of that particular ship. But I thought for his own defending, Maguire, was constantly nipping in, constantly winning his challenges and bringing the ball out really well. And also big shout out Dean Henderson.
It was a good performance. I thought Dean Henderson was very, very good. The save for the free kick was particularly impressive, I thought, because he takes a step to his right-hand side and then manages to get back over and claw it round the post. The free kick later on from Cresswell. So I thought he played well. Maguire was very good, very commanding, very calm. Even had a shot on target, which I thought was It was. I thought that
Not a
was
bad shot.
Fair enough effort.
It was never going in, but I was kind of happy. It was never ever going in, but I was kind of happy he took it on because it was like a frustration thing, and I think it can give the team a little bit of something similar to Scott McTominay's that hit the side net. He probably should have done better, but at the same time, it was
Wan-Bissaka I thought was good as well. The tackle the tackle on Bowen in the first half was very good, where it looked like Bowen was going to more or less have a free run at the goal, and he managed to get back and make the tackle. He was very solid, and even going forward, I thought he was fine. I thought he was comfortable at times, and I think he's getting there, to be honest, with getting a bit further forward, been a bit more comfortable on the ball. I thought even today there was times it's not really his touch for me. There's so many times like Maguire or Lindelof play a pass out to the side, and it's not a simple pass. It's one maybe like chest high or knee high, and his touch is fine. It's just sometimes the next step, once he commits himself to go forward, sometimes the decision making isn't great, sometimes the execution isn't great. But I've got no complaints with Wan-Bissaka at all, and he was very good today.
I think he's actually improved in his attacking play this season. I know that the goals and assists aren't there necessarily to justify that or, at least support that, but even against last week against Southampton, I thought he had a really nice touch to Cavani before his assist for Bruno for the opening goal that we had. He kind of played him a little lifted a pass with his left foot over the defender's leg, and Cavani was able to run onto it and then obviously play the ball to Bruno. I think he's showing himself more often in forward areas. I do think there's obviously plenty of room for improvement in that sense, but it's stupid to constantly focus, for me anyway. I think it's really stupid and reductive to constantly focus on the thing that he's not great at and then reduce what he's actually great at.
You would say that,
but it's stupid. Like what he does, he's the best. He's the best right back in the league defensively. I don't even think.
I don't think so.
100%.
No.
There's no
the best one-on-one right back. 100%. And in certain games, that when that's always tested on, yes, absolutely. Positionally and early, you can't be 10 out of 10 at one thing and then not really that high at all the other things and still be, elite, I don't think. And I'm not saying that to kind of dampen the praise. I thought he was good today, and I thought there is definitely improvement on the year, both, defending and attacking. So, it's only good news as far as I'm concerned, but no, I wouldn't say so.
Who's better? What right back?
Walker.
Who?
Kyle Walker.
His positioning is god awful. He's out of position all the time.
Quality.
Absolutely not. He's absolutely.
Why is he not cap? Is Wan-Bissaka? Why can't he get into the England team?
Why couldn't Jack Grealish get into the England team forever? That's a bullshit argument.
Well, he is now.
I quite like Reece James or whatever his name is from the Chelsea team.
He's got an assist here tonight. I think he's absolutely quality. I think he's probably a bit soon.
I think he's a better all-around fullback than Wan-Bissaka. I would agree with that. But if we're just talking defensively, I think he's comfortably the best defensive right back in England. I don't even think it's close. Either way, my point is, I just think that we should and this happens with a lot of our players. The Fred thread is a perfect example of this. Why isn't Fred has no goals? He hasn't created. Is that his job? Is that what he's being asked to do in the team? If that is your problem with him, then you're missing. Then just go to the Ole thread and complain about Ole, please. Because he's not in the team.
You think there's some common ground between posters who might say those things and those things?
But that's kind of my point. Is you can't. We shouldn't be complaining about players who are good at what they're being asked to do. Wan-Bissaka he's not being asked to be Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? That's clearly not what he's being asked to do. I have an issue with Pogba not scoring goals, right, is different to me than Wan-Bissaka not getting assists or producing goals. Those are such different things because we're clearly set up, for me, that the creativity should be coming from midfield in terms of players like Pogba, Bruno, Van de Beek, very specifically. So when they're not delivering, it's a much bigger issue to me than, did Wan-Bissaka make an overlapping run at the right time? Which is a constant refrain from ours truly, Ed. But I just think I
think we also forget his age a lot of the time.
He's 22?
A lot of the time. Yeah, I mean, if even, yeah. I mean, it's, and for a player who's not a natural fullback or wasn't a natural fullback even in his professional career or his semi-professional career. Moving on, I think the only other one I really want to mention is Telles. Really tough day, but got the assist and the effort was there throughout. He didn't lose his head with it, and it was very trying for him, but he was consistently able to be gotten at, which is a wee bit of a concern. I think that's probably what we all would have expected and known we were maybe getting, and probably were some of the concerns around buying him, and that's why he maybe wasn't necessarily our first choice or anything like that. However, early in his United career, early in terms of adjusting to England, so I wouldn't draw too many firm conclusions about that.
The things he was bad at aren't like he was bad, but he wasn't. I didn't watch that match and was like, I don't even know if this guy can play.
No, not that. He's still good on the ball, and he got forward and he was putting in the effort. He just looked very. But I really rate Jared Bowen. So it just seemed like he could very easily get dragged out of position and very easily beaten on the dribble.
I think he gets sucked in. He gets sucked into the middle really easily.
I don't think those are fatal flaws in terms of a United fullback, maybe at other teams, but 9 times out of 10 you just care, and he had the assist, and it was a good assist, and it's not. I still don't think we're necessarily set up to use him the best in terms of how we play, but again, he's like 5 games into his United career, if even. Tuesday night Leipzig drew 3-3 with Bayern today, which I imagine is quite. What was apparently an absolute barnstormer, classic of a game. Which I think that means they stay top of the Bundesliga.
Bayern is top.
Bayern's top, yeah. So I think Leipzig will probably take quite a lot from that. It may have been a very sapping game. I think would possibly the only thing you could point at in terms of a positive for us. But Jimmy, that's what's the score for Tuesday? That is a huge game.
That's massive, absolutely massive. I said after the last game, I'm not totally confident at all of going and getting a result, just because they are a very good team, and I think it'll take a very, very big performance on Tuesday. Fred not being there, that's a loss straight off the bat. Hopefully Cavani and hopefully Martial, in terms of numbers, they aren't going to be missing. I just checked what Ollie said, and Ollie said, it was just little niggly injuries rather than anything too serious, so hopefully they'll both be available on Tuesday. But we are going to need a very big performance on Tuesday night. I know we beat them 5-0 at Old Trafford, and at times it did look quite convincing, but it's an enormous game on Tuesday. They haven't got Upamecano playing, which I think is a very big thing.
Yeah, that is a big thing.
Yeah, that's going to hurt us.
Part of the way. What do you say, Ashwin?
I said that's gonna hurt us.
But I do think we need to play much better than we have in the last 3 games from the start, because I do think Red Bull aren't a team that, if you give them the initiative and if you give them the lead, it'll be very, very hard, I think, to fight back into a game like that. So I think we need to start on the front foot.
Have to pick you up there. We got a bit of flack on Twitter for saying Red Bull when they're not called Red Bull, even
apologies.
though they obviously are Red
Leipzig.
Bull. So,
Leipzig.
Apologies, listeners. Leipzig or Arby's. Ashwin.
I don't think. As I would say, that's the American way we say. That's how we say it in America. I don't think we're going to start this match.
Oh no, I don't think we are.
No, not I.
This is going to be a counter-attack.
This is bite your nails, hold on, and don't wet yourself.
It's just it's honestly suited for. We should be playing on this is a match where it actually makes sense to play on the counter, because a draw doesn't. We go through. A draw is great for us.
Yeah,
we don't need to take
totally. But we're not good playing for it. Anytime we play for a draw, it inevitably ends in a loss. Playing for a draw is such a tightrope in terms of how to manage that.
I don't think we'll play for the draw, but I think the openings we're going to try to create are going to be, let them come on to us and then play on the counter. And to be fair, if Cavani is out with a muscle injury and Martial is hurt, I don't know how good, I don't know how much you could really expect to kind of play on the front foot, have Greenwood at striker, and just I think it makes sense to actually play on the counter, just kind of with the person.
I think more than not necessarily the front foot. I just mean for this game, it is important to have the initiative.
Not starting awfully.
Yeah.
Just give the entire momentum of the game to the other team, because, as I said, we've done it against West Ham, Southampton, PSG in the space of a week, and Leipzig just are not a team you can do that against and hope to have a decent outcome.
Yeah, Jimmy's not setting the bar totally high. He's just saying
Crap.
We'd like to start the game not as 11 strangers who have never heard of the game of football. Do you know what I mean? So, that'd be really cool. I think one interesting thing is obviously we're gonna have to see how the injuries shake out. I mean, we now have there's obviously Bruno should be fine, but who knows? Cavani, we're gonna have to look at that. Martial, we're gonna have to look at that. Fred suspended. So straight away, the team that we played against Leipzig in the first leg is shot to bits. So I think that might play in our favour a wee bit. Leipzig are going to be coming for revenge, but they're also going to maybe expect us to play the same kind of game, and it might not even be an option based on the players that are available. So starting a midfield of Pogba and someone else is very different to a McTominay and a Fred or whoever it else is. Fred and a Matic. So it'll just be interesting to see how it shakes out. But I mean, as simple as it's a season defining game. I am not about the Europa League this year. I am normally absolutely buzzing. Once the sadness of being in the competition gives way to the chance of a European trophy, I'm normally all for it. But this year, no, absolutely not. So absolutely huge game. We will 100% be back after the Leipzig game, hopefully as soon as possible, either celebrating or drowning our sorrows. So until then, it's good night from me.
Good night, troops.
Good night for me.